When the HOA president destroyed my disabled daughter's colorful prosthetic hand, claiming it violated aesthetic standards, she had no idea I was a single parent with a brother who specialized in disability law. Now, I'm not just seeking justice. I'm going to take everything she has. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. A hand to hold. Standing up against injustice. The move. We were so happy when we found our new home. After years of saving, I finally had enough for a down payment on a small house in Maple Grove Estates. It wasn't fancy, but it had a backyard where my daughter Lily could play, and it was close to a good school that had resources for children with special needs. Lily was born without her right hand. At 8 years old, she had recently received her first prosthetic hand. It wasn't just any prosthetic, it was custom-made with colorful designs that Lily had chosen herself. Stars and rainbows decorated the lightweight plastic. The doctors said having a prosthetic she liked would help her adjust to using it. For the first time in her life, Lily could hold things with both hands, and her confidence was growing every day. The day we moved in, our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Patricia Wilson, came over. She was the head of the Homeowners Association, HOA. She handed me a thick binder of rules while looking at our moving boxes with disapproval. "Welcome to Maple Grove Estates. Every home must maintain the standards of our community," she said, her voice sharp. "I noticed your mailbox is a different shade than our approved colors. That will need to be fixed immediately." I nodded politely, though I was confused. The mailbox had come with the house. "And we don't allow toys or equipment left in the front yard. Everything must be put away by sunset," she added, eyeing Lily's bicycle that we had just unloaded. "Of course," I said. "We're still settling in." Mrs. Wilson's eyes then landed on Lily, who was carrying a box of her toys to the door. Her prosthetic hand was visible, gripping the side of the box. "What is that?" Mrs. Wilson asked, pointing at Lily's hand. "That's my daughter's prosthetic hand," I explained. "She was born without her right hand." Mrs. Wilson's face tightened. "Well, that's unusual. Just make sure it doesn't violate any aesthetic codes. Anything that stands out isn't good for property values." I felt my stomach twist with anger, but I kept my voice calm for Lily's sake. Her prosthetic helps her function. It's medically necessary. Yes, but does it need to be so colorful?" Mrs. Wilson asked. "We have rules about bright colors on home exteriors." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My daughter's prosthetic isn't part of a house exterior. It's part of her. Mrs. Wilson simply handed me her business card. "Call me if you have any questions about the HOA rules. And do something about that mailbox by next week." With that, she turned and walked back to her house, leaving me speechless. The escalation. Over the next few weeks, we received notices for various violations. Our grass was half an inch too high, our garbage can was visible from the street for more than 24 hours, and Lily's basketball hoop needed to be removed from our driveway. Each notice was signed by Mrs. Wilson. Despite this, Lily was adjusting well to our new home. She made friends with the children across the street and spent hours playing with them. Her colorful prosthetic hand became a point of interest rather than mockery among the neighborhood kids. They thought it was cool, and for once, Lily felt special in a good way. One evening, while I was preparing dinner, Lily came running into the kitchen, tears streaming down her face. "Mom?" Mrs. Wilson yelled at me, she sobbed. I knelt down to her level. "What happened, sweetie?" "I was playing with Emma and Jake in their yard," Lily explained between sobs. Mrs. Wilson came over and said my hand was an eyesore, and that I was lowering property values just by being visible. My blood boiled. No one speaks to my child that way. No one. I marched across the street to Mrs. Wilson's house and knocked on her door. When she answered, her face was set in that same disapproving expression I'd come to know well. "Mrs. Wilson, I understand you spoke to my daughter about her prosthetic hand," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes, I did," she replied without hesitation. "This is a high-end neighborhood. Appearances matter. Her device is distracting and not in keeping with our community standards." "That device is part of my daughter," I said. "And she has every right to play outside like any other child." Mrs. Wilson sighed as if I was being unreasonable. "Look, I'm not saying she can't play outside. I'm merely suggesting a more neutral-colored prosthetic. Perhaps something skin-toned that doesn't draw attention. My daughter chose those colors because they make her happy," I said. "They help her feel proud of her prosthetic instead of ashamed." "Well, your daughter's feelings aren't my concern," Mrs. Wilson replied coldly. "The HOA rules are my concern. And while there's nothing specific about prosthetics in our guidelines, there is a clause about maintaining aesthetic harmony in all visible aspects of the community. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you seriously suggesting my daughter's medical device falls under HOA rules? Everything visible from the street falls under our purview, she said with finality. Good evening. And with that, she closed the door in my face. The vandalism. A week later, Lily had a playdate at Emma's house. When I went to pick her up, she wasn't wearing her prosthetic. Lily, where's your hand? I asked, concerned. I left it on Emma's porch when we were playing in the sprinklers, she explained. It's not waterproof. We went to the porch, but the prosthetic wasn't there. We searched the yard, the house, even the street. Nothing. Just as we were about to give up, Emma's mom gasped and pointed to Mrs. Wilson's trash can at the curb. Sticking out from under the lid was a glimpse of rainbow-colored plastic. My heart sank as I walked over and lifted the lid. There was Lily's prosthetic hand, broken into pieces, covered in black paint that was still wet. The colorful stars and rainbows were barely visible beneath the paint. Lily burst into tears when she saw it. My hand. She broke my hand. I carefully gathered the pieces and put them in my bag. I was too shocked to confront Mrs. Wilson at that moment. Instead, I took Lily home and called the police to file a report for vandalism and destruction of property. When the officer arrived, I explained what happened and showed him the damaged prosthetic. He seemed genuinely disturbed by the situation. This is a serious matter, he said. This prosthetic is considered medical equipment, and deliberately damaging it could be classified as a hate crime against a person with disabilities. He took photos and notes, then went to speak with Mrs. Wilson. Through our window, I could see her gesturing angrily, pointing at our house repeatedly. The officer remained calm, writing in his notebook. Later that evening, the officer returned to tell us that Mrs. Wilson had denied taking the prosthetic but admitted to removing an unauthorized toy from community property. She claimed she didn't know it was a prosthetic limb. That's a lie, I said. She's commented on it multiple times. She knows exactly what it is. The officer nodded. We'll continue investigating. In the meantime, you should document any further incidents. That night, I held Lily as she cried herself to sleep. Why doesn't she like my rainbow hand, Mom? She asked. Why doesn't she like me? Some people are afraid of things that are different, I explained, stroking her hair. But there's nothing wrong with being different. Your rainbow hand is beautiful because it's part of you. But as Lily drifted off to sleep, my sadness turned to determination. Mrs. Wilson had crossed a line. She had hurt my child, not just emotionally but physically, by taking away her ability to use both hands. This wasn't about HOA rules anymore. This was about human decency and my daughter's right to exist without shame. I called my brother, who was a lawyer specializing in disability rights. As I explained the situation, his initial shock gave way to professional interest. What she's done is not just vandalism, he said. It's discrimination under the Americans with Disabilities Act. The HOA cannot make rules that effectively discriminate against people with disabilities. And destroying medical equipment? That's a whole other level of liability. What can we do? I asked. Document everything, he advised. Gather witnesses, keep all the notices she sent you, and get a repair estimate for the prosthetic. Then we'll file a lawsuit that will make her wish she'd never heard of an HOA. For the first time since finding the broken prosthetic, I felt a glimmer of hope. The plan. The next day, I took the damaged prosthetic to Lily's doctor. The news wasn't good. This can't be repaired, Dr. Chin said, examining the pieces. The internal components are damaged and the custom-fitted socket is cracked. We'll need to make a new one. How long will that take? I asked. At least 6 weeks, she replied. And your insurance may not cover a replacement this soon. They typically only cover one every few years unless there's significant growth. But this wasn't our fault, I protested. It was vandalized. Dr. Chin nodded sympathetically. That's why you need to file a claim against whoever did this. The replacement will cost about $15,000. The figure took my breath away. As a single parent, I didn't have that kind of money. Lily would have to go without her prosthetic for weeks, losing all the progress she'd made in using it. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my brother, laying out our plan. We would sue Mrs. Wilson and the HOA for 1. Violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. 2. Destruction of medical equipment. 3. Emotional distress. 4. Disability discrimination. We need to gather evidence, my brother said. Witnesses, documentation, everything. I nodded and pulled out my phone. I've been keeping a log of every interaction with Mrs. Wilson since we moved in. And I have all her HOA violation notices. Good, he said. Now we need to talk to the neighbors. See if anyone else has had issues with her or if anyone saw her take the prosthetic. Over the next few days, I discovered I wasn't alone. Many neighbors had stories about Mrs. Wilson's tyrannical rule over the HOA. The family with the solar panels who were forced to remove them despite state laws protecting renewable energy installations. The elderly couple who received daily fines for their grandson's wheelchair ramp until they finally moved out. The single dad who was threatened with eviction for having a women's hairstyle when he was growing his hair to donate to children with cancer. Everyone had a story, but everyone had been too afraid to stand up to her. Until now. Emma's parents had a security camera that covered part of their front yard. When we reviewed the footage, there it was. Mrs. Wilson walking onto their property, picking up Lily's prosthetic, examining it with disgust and then carrying it away. The evidence was irrefutable. Armed with this video and statements from neighbors, my brother filed the lawsuit. We also contacted local news outlets, who were eager to cover a story about a HOA president discriminating against a child with a disability. The confrontation. The day after the lawsuit was filed, Mrs. Wilson came pounding on our door. Her face was red with fury. "How dare you sue me?" she shouted when I opened the door. "I've done nothing but try to maintain the standards of this community." I remained calm. "You destroyed my daughter's medical equipment. Equipment that cost thousands of dollars and that she relies on every day. It was a toy left on community property," she insisted. "We have video of you taking it from Emma's private property," I replied. "And multiple witnesses who confirm you knew exactly what it was." The color drained from her face. "You're bluffing." "The video has been submitted to the court and the police," I said. "And it's not just about the prosthetic. It's about how you've been treating everyone in this neighborhood, using the HOA as your personal tool to bully people who don't fit your narrow definition of acceptable." Mrs. Wilson's expression hardened again. "This community was perfect before people like you started moving in. People who don't care about property values or appearances. People like my disabled daughter, you mean?" I asked. She didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. "The lawsuit will proceed," I said. "And from what I've heard from other neighbors, it might become a class action suit." As I closed the door, I saw something I never expected to see on Mrs. Wilson's face: fear. The next day, I received a notice that an emergency HOA meeting had been called. When I arrived at the community center, nearly every homeowner in Maple Grove Estates was there. Mrs. Wilson sat at the front, flanked by two other board members who looked uncomfortable. As the meeting began, Mrs. Wilson tried to control the narrative, describing the lawsuit as frivolous and an attack on our community standards. But when she opened the floor for comments, the dam broke. One by one, neighbors stood up to share their stories of Mrs. Wilson's abuse of power. The elderly couple with the wheelchair ramp were in tears as they described being forced from their home. The single dad received a standing ovation when he showed photos of his donated hair at the children's cancer ward. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't need to say much. I simply held up the broken pieces of Lily's prosthetic. "This is what community standards meant to Mrs. Wilson," I said. "Destroying a child's ability to hold a pencil, to catch a ball, to feel normal for once in her life. All because it had rainbows and stars on it." The room fell silent. Then, from the back, someone started calling for a vote to remove Mrs. Wilson from the HOA board. The motion spread like wildfire. By the end of the night, Mrs. Wilson was voted out, along with her two closest allies on the board. A new interim board was elected, with Emma's father as the president. His first act was to pass a resolution supporting our lawsuit against Mrs. Wilson personally, while excluding the HOA as an entity, a smart move that my brother had suggested. The victory. The legal process took months, but Mrs. Wilson's position grew increasingly untenable. The security footage was damning, and when her homeowner's insurance declined to cover her legal expenses due to the intentional act exclusion, she began to panic. 3 months after filing the lawsuit, we received a settlement offer. Mrs. Wilson would 1. Pay for a new top-of-the-line prosthetic for Lily. 2. Cover all our legal expenses. 3. Pay significant damages for emotional distress. 4. Sell her house and move out of Maple Grove Estates. My brother advised that it was a good offer, better than we might get if we went to trial. But before accepting, I had one more condition: a public apology to Lily. Mrs. Wilson's lawyer balked, but eventually she agreed. On a sunny Saturday morning, with the entire neighborhood watching, Mrs. Wilson stood in our driveway and apologized to my daughter. "I'm sorry for taking and damaging your prosthetic hand," she said, the words clearly difficult for her. "What I did was wrong and I have no excuse for my behavior." Lily, who had been without her prosthetic for months now, looked up at Mrs. Wilson with an expression far wiser than her 8 years. "I forgive you," she said simply. "But you should know that being different isn't bad. It's just different." Mrs. Wilson had no response to that. She signed the settlement papers and walked away. 2 weeks later, a for sale sign appeared in front of her house. With the settlement money, we not only got Lily a new prosthetic, even more colorful than before with LED lights that could change colors at the press of a button, but we also established a foundation to help other children afford customized prosthetics that reflected their personalities rather than trying to hide their differences. The new HOA board, led by Emma's dad, rewrote the community guidelines. The new first rule: Maple Grove Estates values diversity in all its forms and is committed to being an inclusive community where everyone feels welcome. 6 months after the settlement, we held a neighborhood block party. Children ran through sprinklers, adults grilled hot dogs, and there was Lily showing off her new light-up prosthetic hand to a group of admiring friends. She could pick up a ball, hold a cup, and give high fives. But most importantly, she could be herself without fear. As I watched her play, one of my neighbors sat down beside me. "You know," she said, "Mrs. Wilson thought she was protecting property values by enforcing uniformity. But since she left and we became known as the inclusive community that stood up for a little girl, house prices have actually gone up. Turns out, people want to live in a place where neighbors care about each other." I smiled, watching Lily chase after a butterfly, her prosthetic hand glowing rainbow colors in the sunlight. Sometimes, standing up for what's right isn't just the moral choice, it's the choice that makes everything better for everyone. Except Mrs. Wilson, of course. Last I heard, she moved to a condo with no HOA. Some people just never learn. But we did. We learned that community isn't about looking the same or following arbitrary rules. It's about holding each other up when we fall, helping each other heal, and sometimes holding someone accountable when they hurt others. As for Lily, she learned something too. She learned that being different isn't something to hide. It's something to embrace, to decorate with stars and rainbows and lights that shine so bright, they can change an entire neighborhood for the better.